back to the curriculum. My name is Matt Gildersleeve. I am your host. This podcast is brought to you by Hawken Dynamics, the world leader in innovative force plate technology. Hawken Dynamics takes a user-centric approach featuring a fully customizable cloud-based software that allows users to easily digest and analyze complex force plate data. Their technology is constantly evolving, much like an app update for your iPhone. They communicate with users on a daily basis to make their systems better. In addition to all of that, they also offer the most competitive price for a bilateral force plate on the market. And they're the only force plate company offering a completely wireless system. Not to mention their CEO, Bennett Watson, is a genuinely great, authentic human being, and they're just great to work with. We want to thank Hawken Dynamics for their sponsorship. Enjoy the episode. All right, so we are officially starting episode number 3 of the Coaches versus COVID-19 mini-series. As we get started here, before I introduce my co-host, just want to hit you guys one more time with just remembering the importance of what we're doing and why we're doing it, and that is to continue to fundraise money for COVID-19. If you guys go to our webpage, which is www.coachesversuscovid19.com, you can find our GoFundMe page and you can donate there. We're approximately about $165,000 right now, with a goal at the end of this 8-week podcast series to get to $200,000. So guys, if you're enjoying these and you are listening, please continue to donate. And without further ado, I will introduce my co-host, Drake Berberet.
What's up, guys? This episode is brought to us by Bridge Athletic. Bridge Athletic has agreed to sponsor the remaining episodes of this 8-week podcast series. They've donated an amount of $1,000 towards this cost. So thank you, Bridge Athletic, for doing that. Just say something brief about what their company is, what they do. Bridge Athletic builds high-performance training tools for coaches, trainers, physical therapists, and athletes at the highest levels of their field. Bridge Athletic's market-leading platform allows industry practitioners to leverage the power of the cloud and big data to revolutionize the way performance programs are created, delivered, and tracked. They currently work with over 250 elite organizations, including teams across various bodies and youth organizations, those in the Power 5, professional sports leagues, etc. Bridge values aligned with those of Coaches versus COVID-19. They originally donated on our initial first fundraising round. They donated $1,000 as a company donor. It's pretty awesome that they've stepped up to donate again for this 8-week podcast series. So thank you guys for doing that. And then again, if we are looking for additional episode sponsors, so if you know of anybody or you are a company that wants to sponsor an episode, feel free to reach out to me or Matt on Instagram or email. All right, our speaker for today is Max Schmarzo. Max Schmarzo currently serves as the Director of Sports Science and Research at Resilience Code. He is an athletic trainer by trade out of College in Iowa, and he also got his master's from Iowa State. He is a CSCS as well. He's also the co-founder of EdgeU and is the CEO of Strong by Science, training consulting platform. Lots of other things that he does through that platform. He's also authored 3 books: Isometrics for Performance, Applied Principles of Optimal Power Development, and Force is King. He was also a college professor at Iowa State as he was getting his master's. So he's definitely done a lot in the field of sports science and strength and conditioning. He thinks outside the box. I had the privilege to work with Max a couple summers ago out at Resilience Code, and I've never learned more in 3 months than during that time. I like to call Max a mentor, a friend, self-proclaimed potato king, as we might talk about. Man loves potatoes, but with no further ado, Max Schmarzo.
I think we can stop it there, right? Isn't that where it ends? I don't want to go any further. I can only go down.
Matt, tell us a little bit about this potato king thing. This is the second time I've heard this referenced.
Okay, so I am a third world dieter. I eat lots of potatoes, as my mom would say, because she'd always give me heck when I was younger. And just came out, potato protein is really good for you. There's 7 grams of protein in a big potato, a large one. high leucine, full essential amino acid content as well. So it's actually pretty anabolic. So it's probably the best food out there for you for a price. It's good potassium as well. I just literally cooked one. I was supposed to eat it on camera. I was going to do it for Drake, but I got hungry. I just eat organic ketchup and potatoes all day. I'm an animal. But that's kind of how it's pretty simple and straight to the point. So it's nothing too crazy. I'll literally eat a whole potato. I'll walk around with a potato because I was athletic training. We had a, sneak food kind of at times. You couldn't whip out like a hamburger. And so we'd be on the sidelines and I'd have a potato rolled up in my back pocket, a sweet potato cooked. And it's sustenance, right? Strictly for the nutrients inside. And that's kind of how I got it. And so as my parting gift from Co-College, they gave me a bag of potatoes. And I couldn't be more thankful for that because I ate them all.
Are we talking white potatoes, sweet potatoes, Yukon potatoes? What's the potato of choice here? Tater tots, French
all right,
fries?
Everyone, listen up real quick. It's pretty straight to the point. We got white potatoes. I used to be sweet potatoes. They don't cook well in the microwave, even though they have better taste. I'm a pink Himalayan salt guy, which I have right next to me because I just got finished eating a tater. I think my ketchup is still out somewhere too. Organic ketchup, organic, far superior. Chop it up in half. We're in altitude, so Colorado, it takes a little longer to cook things in the microwave. 8 minutes, about half of a large potato, sliced and diced. You get your homemade French fries, you get a dip them in, and life is good. You cook that portion, so you cook the half, 8 minutes, you eat the half while you get the other half cooked going. So you got a little 2-for-1 deal. You can't lose. It's really good for you. That's why I look so great. It's my hair is growing back in my head. My hairline is returning, not receding. It's done wonders for me. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, it's just a cheap, easy, lazy way to eat food.
Potato podcast. That's a great way to start.
Absolutely. So I also got to plug Tom, my man. We also have a nutrition company coming out, a supplement line here, Upper Echelon Nutrition. He's also a huge potato nut. So this is where it came from. He played hoops at Rutgers, and so he'll bet me in potatoes. We're kind of odd like that, but that's how I guess it is going.
When did he play at Rutgers? I didn't know that. That's a pretty cool gym to play at.
5 years ago.
That's a neat place to play at. I enjoyed it when I was there. But
all right, so Max, my first question for you. Okay, obviously, you're an outside the box thinker. I think anybody who follows you or who has read your books knows, you're obviously highly intelligent and you think outside the box and you don't just follow the norms just to follow them. My first question, just trying to always, I think we're in the technology age and the information age where we have so much information so readily available. As you've gone through your career and you've sat there and you've analyzed and looked at this information and all the out of the box thinking you do, what is your process for saying, hey Max, this is really good, this is a great idea, this should go in a book, versus, man, Max, that was dumb, that didn't work, let's move on to the next one? Do you have a process? Is it organic? How do you work through that?
I can swear, right? So I'm gonna quote someone here. My dad is he's a data analyst. He's actually CTO of Hitachi Vantara, so he's a data strategist, I'll call him. And he goes, I get ideas all day. Ideas aren't shit. I'd rather ideate than have an idea. So what that means is to have an idea, everyone's got ideas. Not many people do things. And no one knows if it's a good idea until you try it. And so always thinking about it from a level of why am I doing something to interpret that idea, i.e. I read a book and I go, oh, well, that seems like a great idea. It'd be pretty stupid of you to go apply that idea to 50 athletes right away without you trying it at the lowest level. And so what you want to start to look at it is from almost like a business side. What's a minimal viable product? And when we talk about a minimal viable product, you think about what's the smallest thing I can make and still get the bit of information I want out of it. For example, I want to do multi-load tracking on VBT. Cool, good idea. You want to, squat once a week and see how fast the bar moves and see if you move things faster. Great, wonderful. But you need to understand that there's way more variables outside of just that, collecting the information, but how do you store it? How do you interpret it? What does it mean? What insights are you going to get from it? And you can learn a lot of that by testing it on yourself. So if I said, okay, I want to implement this, well, what's the easiest minimal viable product? My staff has to collect their VBT metrics for the next 4 weeks. We got to understand what Excel sheet we're doing it. Is it on a cloud server? Is it going to be in a OneDrive, a Google Drive? Is it going to be plugged into our AMS? Then how are we going to interpret it? Because what happens is we get an idea, and ideas are wonderful, but ideas are normally nebulous term, which we use to kind of describe something that we can't describe well. So we talk about people trying to put their idea into action. It typically falls short because it has no legs, because they've overshot 7 steps. What you need to think about is, how do I actually work from an infrastructure standpoint to give that idea legs and give it credence to actually build off of it? Example, I want to do that VBT for my whole team. Great. Wonderful. But to get there, you can't assume the end product because you have an idea. You got to understand what's actually reasonable and what's feasible along the way. An example for looking at that would be as if you're going to build a product, say a piece of technology, or you're going to make a t-shirt, clothing line. Think about it from a business standpoint. You're not going to just run to the very end and order 4,000 SKUs of a t-shirt if you don't even ask customers if they like it. Or even if your mom likes it, or your dad likes it, or your brother or sister like it. Get the information you can get out of it to allow you to understand what's going on. I think there's a classic quote, I'm probably going to butcher it, but it's something like, would you rather take 1,000 envelopes and do one at a time, or put 1,000 stamps on at a time, than lick them at 1,000 at a time? And you want to do one at a time because each time you complete one, you essentially have an iteration loop of understanding. For people at home who are like, what the heck are you talking about, Max? As simple as this. Have you been to a bar before? Probably yes, I'd assume. Everyone's of age in this conversation. And you go talk to a girl at a bar, and you don't go ask her to marry you. You ask how she's doing. And if she looks away from you, you kind of walk away. You're kind of done, right? But maybe she engages you and she goes, oh, okay, I'm doing well. How are you? And you get to talking. Then you get her number. Then you go on a first date and so on. You meet their parents, and then you get to marriage. Those are iterative feedback loops we do as human beings to make decisions and give us direction. So when we have an idea, I think that woman is, attractive woman. I want to meet her and maybe one day marry her is a far-fetched idea. You don't run to the end. You start an iterative feedback loops to give you direction. Okay, she's great, but she doesn't like Chipotle. We're done. Like, that's not going to happen anymore, kind of deal. So you go through your feedback loops to help you understand the same process needs to take place when you have an idea for training. If I have a goal, if I want to collect all this data and information, and I've never collected any data before, start as small as possible and get as much as you can of the small little one conversation at the bar you're having, the one piece of data, before you extrapolate to larger means. And so if you're a company, you have financial incentive to actually give direction, right? You have investors. Someone's puts $1 million in your company. You're not just going to run to the end and hope you're right. Right? But we do that sometimes in strength conditioning. We go, oh, well, let's just run straight to the end. No, it didn't work. Next one. The issue is in companies, if that doesn't work, you're out of a job. You're out of a business. But we kind of have some freedom, obviously, where we're not going to be out of business if our VBT doesn't work, but we're not held to the same kind of stringent standards that a company might, where someone's physically invested financial currency into our model to propel it, and hopefully they want a return. But if we have that mindset, that same incentivized thought process, then we start building and almost acting like a lean startup, as opposed to this monolithic, already predetermined company that's corporate level wide, of kind of like a huge assumption-based model. So huge tangent, I apologize, but hopefully that makes sense, because you got to have an idea. You read something, it looks great. How can I validate that idea? How can I modify that idea? And then how can I implement and integrate that idea in a way that works contextually for my setting?
Can you dive into that, some of your feedback loops a little more, Max, or maybe your assessment processes or some of the typical ones that you'll use?
Yeah, 100%. So if you think about it, and I want to apply something, I want to collect jump height on my athletes. Okay, you should have a framework first and foremost why you're collecting it. I'm going to collect jump height because A, it's a performance marker, it's a KPI for me. And then B, it's going to be something that I use to dictate my training. If they're jumping high, they're feeling good. If they're low, they might be fatigued. Wonderful. So that's your hypothesis and your assessment. And then all you're going to do is collect that and use that information, jump height, in a model that assesses, are they getting better? And are they then going to have fatigue? And do we reduce, the training load? But again, what happens is that's a small little feedback loop. So every day you have a learning opportunity. Every week you test someone, you have an opportunity to better, okay, should I be testing 20 guys at once or 10 guys in different chunks? How do I want to do that to make it most efficient and effective? As opposed to running to the very end where they go, I want to do a force velocity profile. I want to do speed strength assessments. I want to do that on 50 of our football players. And I said, okay, well, that's pretty cool idea. Have you collected jump height weekly? Because if you haven't collected jump height weekly, you're going to have a heck of a lot of trouble collecting full force velocity profiles in a meaningful manner. So do a little bit, a lot, not a lot, a little.
That's awesome. I love that. You kind of hit on this a little bit, and I've had someone, people talking about this before. Your view on you kind of hit the business side, Max, of that one tangent you had there, not the potato one. Your view on a performance staff and how you see that go from the top down. I've heard a little bit you talk on that. You would dive into that?
Yeah, 100%. I'm biased, so obviously I have opinions, and I think my opinions are somewhat correct. So anyone who disagrees with me, you're more than welcome to. I think it needs to come from a multifactorial standpoint. So it's, where are you at right now? What's your current setting? For example, I'm in a private setting. You're not necessarily in a private setting. So what we have access to and what we can do is totally different. So in a setting where it's a team setting, you have to understand where does the buck stop, right? Is there a medical director above you? Yes, we like to think we're in control of everything sometimes, but really that's not the case. There might be a medical director. There might be some higher entity that is ahead of you. But in short, from a performance staff, it really then depends how you interact. For example, if you have someone slightly above you that is basically the resources, the investor, they're that person who's going to delegate funds. We have to then collect information that shows our athletes are getting better, that what we're doing is effective, and then present that to our investor or higher up to allocate more funds, because we are showing that we are beneficial in what we're doing. On the same side of it, you need to have the willingness and openness to try new things that allow you to then learn what actually works. And so that's when we talk about the little iterative feedback loops. And so as a staff, that's kind of taking it as a whole, because you guys are like a living organism of an entity. It's not like you're hyper isolated. You're basically a bunch of living cells together. And how can I collect information from different realms, whether it's one node or the other node, to then optimize what we're trying to accomplish? An example would be, I have my performance staff. We sit down and we go, I want to show that tracking jump height reduces injury because we can monitor fatigue better. Great. Now, if Matt, you try doing the whole thing yourself, it's not going to work. It's not going to happen. So then you have to then delegate certain individuals to maybe collect the jump height. Someone is helping interpret the information, and maybe you're making the executive decision because you're kind of the captain of the ship. Wonderful. But once you have those delegated roles, those entities then begin to collect the information in a way that kind of streamlines it. But it's all with the same current vernacular or understanding of terminology of what we're trying to do. For example, if someone's put in the data and they realize, okay, look, our Excel spreadsheets are too slow, our analytics platform isn't large enough, they can go back to you and you can then provide maybe a solution in the same way that you can go to them and say, I want to export this data and look at these specific variables so I can make a better decision. It's not like one entity is more important than the other, but it's understanding distinction of roles inside a living organism that allows for cross communication. For example, I went down to a staff for a consulting deal, I think it was a couple spring trainings ago, and they had the whole staff there, the entire staff. What I mean by that, they had the skills coaches there, they had their player dev coaches, they had their strength coaches of all levels. The med staff was there, and we were talking about force plates. I said, okay, well, let's break into groups, one of each of you, and so we have our our med staff, our strength staff, and we have our skill dev staff. And after we discuss what force plates were, how would you utilize them? And one guy goes, we want to look at lateral push-off speed because we're trying to see what's the best way, this is the player dev, for stealing bases. And the strength coaches go, well, that's great because we know these specific metrics that can improve our essentially our lateral push-off speed in the weight room, and we can use force plates to monitor that. If we can say that this position improves lateral force push-off speed and these weight room metrics improve that, and then our PT staff knows when someone gets hurt, they got to return to that previous area, and then our scouting staff knows what to look for potential base stealers. Now we've taken each department and they're all kind of speaking the same language within their own context, which then you can develop your own intellectual property, because then you guys have a staff has determined that this specific metric done this way is more effective and more efficient at getting your athletes to whatever determined KPI is most important. So it becomes this really cool kind of synergistic, powerful entity where everyone is speaking the same language, but within the own domain. So you're not trying to be a physical therapist. You're not trying to be a scout, but you're using that information, that technology is a common thread throughout to allow for those parties to then interact with each other in a more efficient manner, as opposed to your PT doing her return to play protocol is going to be this. And you're like, well, as a strength coach, we don't even work on that. And then the player scouting coach goes, well, that's not even an important metric for us. We don't even look for that in our athletes. As opposed to having three different things, you have one synergistic entity that's working together.
I would say that I agree 1,000%. And I think one of the biggest issues that we have, especially in collegiate football, is integration. We are horrible at integration, especially when you study some of the European sport culture. Like, we are so far behind from a standpoint of performance, nutrition, sport coach, AT. So my next question, Max, is how in the hell do we get that level of integration?
Imagine you had just one metric, going back to the iterative feedback loop, something very small. You just collect jump height, but jump height was utilized from your standpoint to monitor fatigue. Someone's excessively fatigued. Okay, how can I be a check engine light to understand what other areas are they not getting? Look, this person's been fatigued for the past 2 weeks. They need to go see your sports psychologist, see your nutritionist, because something might be going on. That allows you to quarterback in different directions. At the same time, now nutrition has value in jump height. Now sports psychology has value in jump height. Now your med staff goes, okay, jump height is really important. So anytime someone gets hurt, we need to return them back to their baseline or back to their norm for that position in regards to whatever, if they're a DB or corner or linebacker, whatever they need to get to. Then from a performance staff, that jump height's really important, so you're trying to improve it. And now from a scouting standpoint, jump height's really important, so you look for that in certain athletes who are considered, the athlete prospects. Now you've taken one metric and you've pollinated it across different domains, so it can be utilized to help each other. So as opposed to trying to get hyper detailed in one area, let's do FVP, let's do mid-thigh pull, let's do 1080 sprint, let's do 1080 quant, all these 1,000 different things. Why don't we just took one thing and put it across every domain? So the ATC, the PT, the med staff, the nutritionist, the sports psychologist, and yourself all utilized it. And you go, Max, well, there's no research behind that. That's the stupidest thing ever. I said, well, that's not really true. There's a lot of research to show that anytime we have maladaptations, it can be nutritional, psychological, or even internal physiological. So for example, there's a study that looks at people, two different groups. They have a stress group, a high stress, a medium stress, and a low stress group, psychologically stressed, that is. They put them through a really hard workout, and over 96 hours, the low stress group had better adaptation than the high stress group. Actually, the high stress group actually never returned to baseline. So I can use this jump height as a check engine light. I can't determine now as a performance coach that, they're not jumping high because they squatted too much. Well, I know all these factors go into it. I know nutrition goes into it. I know chronic stress goes into it. I know initial inflammatory state goes into it. And I know previous loading goes into it. So if someone's deviating, and they're deviating from the norm based on logical decisions that we have made as a strength staff, then we can make the assumption that probabilistically it's not going to be a loading problem, but it's going to be a maladaptive problem. And a maladaptation problem comes from something of a capacity standpoint that's limited. So nutrition, sleep, recovery, so psychological, nutrition, and then maybe something medical where you go dive even deeper. But you're just taking jump height. That's all you've taken, and you've taken it across multiple domains, and you know how each one of those domains influences jump height, so you then know how to quarterback outside of it from a performance staff.
Let's stay on jump height. Let's talk about that like through an annual plan with at least let's just keep it comparative, I guess, football. So you got off season, you got spring ball, you got off season, you got camp, you got in season. How would you use jump height throughout the year to test readiness, and what would you do with that data?
I'll ask you right back. I'm sure you've done something similar. I want to hear what you've done with it, and then I can share an opinion on it. But obviously, my opinion's horribly biased. So I'm in a private facility, so I get all the bells and whistles here. You don't get those stuff where you're at.
Yeah, we've definitely had to get creative with how we've done it. We've utilized jump mats just because it's what's in our budget. And then, we try to keep validity as high as possible with, keeping guys jumping as consistently as possible. We've used it a whole host of different ways. I would say that we haven't necessarily used it from a readiness standpoint, probably as much as we're going to, more so from a stance of kind of dividing the RSI and trying to isolate and then put guys in buckets. So we'll have, pretty much weekly, we'll have a guy do 3 variations of jumps. We'll have him do a static jump. So we'll have him pretty much go, snap down to a quarter squat, hold it for 3 seconds and jump. We'll have him do a 6 or 12-inch box drop into a jump, and a counter movement jump, and just kind of measure the differences, and then box him into either muscular strength deficient or elastically strength deficient based off that. And that might be the difference in Max's squat on Friday. He might be doing a high speed eccentric band squat versus a isometric pause squat, depending on what bucket he gets dropped into. So we've used jump height measurement significantly on that, and just involved in our plyometrics than necessarily jumping a guy on a Thursday and saying, hey, you might not be ready to play on Saturday. We haven't really got into that yet. That's kind of a now, this year, what can we do next? What can we do better type thing.
Well, what you have there is really interesting in setup. So you have jump height essentially tracked throughout a year, different times and seasons, essentially under similar blocks or training emphases. And so what you can do is calculate what's the standard variance of adaptation. So, okay, during a strength block and during a power block, or during whenever we test, we expect this normative adaptation to occur. We expect this kind of fatigue after a strength block, and we expect this kind of adaptation when we deload them, so on and so forth. What you can then do is look at outliers. Who is not adapting? Why are they not adapting? What does my check engine light say? So when we look at readiness, we don't need to think about readiness in terms of day to day. I think that's like the golden goose, the perfect world. We're not even close to that. Let's just go from like month to month readiness or week to week readiness, and understand why or why not someone is getting to where they are. Because you have enough individuals that you could calculate on average jump heights deviate in this fashion, and then jump heights rebound in this fashion. And if someone hasn't deviated enough, are they not fatigued enough? Could you load them more? And if someone hasn't recovered enough, what issues are there? Have they been excessively loaded on field work? Have they been malnourished? But not eating enough or having a proper nutrition? Or are they having other psychological stressors such as, school stress or not sleeping enough? So then that allows you to look at it analytically from a standpoint that fits your context, because you have the information right in front of you. All you literally need to do is take it, and if you're not Excel wizards, you just go basically, you categorize it in off season, preseason, end season, and you have week 1 to whatever, and how many times you've done it, and you can calculate deviations. And then if you really want to get into it and try to look at someone individually, which isn't always feasible at your level, but saying that you wanted to, you could look at how much fluctuation that individual typically shows. Is this a high fluctuator or a low fluctuator? And you could potentially argue that a high fluctuator is someone who's high volatility, someone who jumps 30, 24, 36, 30, up and down, versus the guy who's like 29, 29, 31, 29. You could maybe make the assumption that someone who's highly volatile is someone who's not as stable from an adaptive standpoint. And there might be other external perturbators that are causing that to not be as stable as it should, because there's such massive pendulum-like swings. So you can literally just take that data that you guys have currently, understand what norms you have. You've already have 1 year of collection. Let's take this year, and we're going to use that as kind of our model, essentially. It's kind of really loose, but it's better than nothing, to show, do we expect someone to go through these kind of ups and down fluctuations? Is that normal for that person? Is it normal for that training group? On average, what do our freshmen typically see during that first 2 months? On average, what do our seniors typically see? Is this senior not doing that? Is this freshman not adapting at all? And then you can make that educated decision based on your context.
I think that's such a good point. And as you're speaking, I'm just thinking about this out loud, Max. Is like, we test on a weekly basis. Some, it might be a flying 10, it might be a 10-yard sprint, but we, every day or every week we're gonna have some form of a test, put them in those intangibles in some form or fashion. But there's a level of undulation to that. And I think as a strength coach, even I'm talking as myself, you're training an athlete, and all of a sudden his vertical goes down an inch in this 1 week. Like, you start to question everything. What are we doing? Are we overtraining? What's going on? The human body is such a complex system. There's gonna be undulation, but what I always have to sit there and tell myself is where are we trending? Like, it's, I think the undulation is acceptable as long as it's trending in the correct direction. And I think what we saw this year, and it was the first time I'd ever had catapult GPSs in my career to actually track and see actual data from that fashion. And, you kind of think of athletes getting torn down throughout the season goes. Well, we hit our highest velocities at the end of the season. you're talking in the Bahamas, at the Bahamas Bowls, when we were hitting our highest velocities. And obviously because we had more exposure to sprinting than we already had. And that makes sense, but you don't think about that. We had undulation. We had weeks where our running back, like, man, he's, maybe is he in the dirt? Is he, he didn't hit his max velocity last game. And then, he'd be right back up there or surpass it the next week. So I think that undulation you're talking about, like, that's a really big thing. I think that we need to talk about more, because that's a tough pill to swallow sometimes and not overreact to.
Well, we don't control everything. Also, too, I'd go steal some stat interns if you guys have any stats department, and go get some performance stats guys who are going to run through your stuff and make your life way easier if you don't have that already. Because those guys, and let's not pretend we're not statisticians here. Like, I didn't go to school for stats. You probably didn't go to school for stats. I have trouble opening up Excel spreadsheets sometimes. I'm about as dumb as it gets when it comes to computer stuff. I know how to interpret things. I know how the body works, but I don't know how to crunch p-values very well. And I don't know how to run other, R whatever and all this other SPSS and fun stuff. So go find someone who's really good at it. I don't go get a salesperson to go fix my plumbing here, and I don't get a plumber to go sell things for me. So that's always something you can utilize too. But part of that, the human body is horribly complex. It's kind of disgusting. And to think that we know how it works is foolish. I was kind of talking to Drake before this. We really need to understand that we don't understand. And only once we can appreciate that we don't understand, then we can probably make less stupid decisions. Told Drake, the stupidest person is someone who doesn't know they're stupid. So if I know I'm stupid in the stock market, I'm not going to invest a lot of money. I'm just not going to be good at it. But if I think I'm not stupid and I'm going to go invest a lot of money, it's a good way to lose money. And so we need to appreciate what we don't know so we can appreciate what we might be able to know, and then understand what our predictions might be erroneously based off of. For example, if I think I control everything of an athlete's body by just being a strength coach, and we think that we can control all fluctuations and all fluctuations are based on our input, well, that's a horribly erroneous assumption. I can, get in a fight with my fiance and my squat goes down. So I don't know if you asked your player that had a fight with their girlfriend last night or not, because their squat could go down, jump height could go down because they decided to play Fortnite the night before and you never knew, and then you blame yourself. And so it's not about blaming anybody, but it's about understanding that things do happen. And if things are happening, what areas can we address? As a performance staff, we can address the Newtonian load on the body. We can say, okay, they can lift heavier, they can lift lighter, they can run more, they cannot run more. But what are other areas that we don't actually dive into that fill up essentially our buckets? And that's the psychological side, that's the nutrition side, that's the sleep hygiene side. And so if we assume that all deviations and fluctuations are based on our own inputs, we have a massive linear assumption that what we do happens. And we all know that's not true. We all know some athletes get in the weight room and they can smell iron and get stronger. And we know some guys work their ass off and never go anywhere. Let's not pretend that's not the case. But then the question becomes, if we have these fluctuations and they are trending in specific areas, because that's what we can do, we can analyze trends and understand at the most granular level what we can do. And then we can say, if this person's trending down, I can't just forever pull off volume. What else is going on inside of that person for that person to make sure that, they're getting the best response out of training possible? Yeah, they drank the 2 shakes you watched in front of you and you made sure they got their protein in and went to, get meals, but you don't know what else is happening. And so that's where we really need to take the time to at least appreciate it. We don't need to know it, but we need to make sure we appreciate it. I heard some neuroscientists say, we don't know what the hell the brain does. So how do we assume what the rest of the body does? There's a lot of things we don't know. I'll be first to admit I don't know a lot. But because we don't know a lot, we can at least make a lot of assumptions based on that not knowing to hopefully make a better understanding of what we're trying to accomplish.
Trying to rationalize an irrational system doesn't make any sense.
No, it's complex. And so think about it like playing blackjack. Okay, I don't. I play blackjack on my phone all the time for free, and I pretend to count cards on it. And so I'm sitting there, and you can get good at counting cards, but you never know what card is next precisely. And so imagine this: you're at a table playing blackjack. You and your friends are all sitting there, and the dealer sucks. He's an idiot, and he's going really slow and allowing you to count cards. And so you're all by each other. The more cards that are face up, the better understanding probabilistically you know what card is coming next. That's probabilistically. You don't actually know for sure. And so we can make better bets. We don't always make the right bet. And that's really important to understand. It's all about this probabilistic web of determinants that are going to, lead to an outcome. And so I can understand we've had, nothing but non-face card show and I'm sitting here with a 7-3 and I'm next up, I'm probably going to double because the odds are that's a face card coming my way. I'm about to get a 10 piece and get 20 and the guy's showing 14. So I'm going to make some money. He could flip it and I get a 2 and I'm screwed. And so, yeah, it's odds are in my favor. It doesn't mean I'm going to be right. And so if we can't even predict what card's coming up next, how the hell are we going to predict what the body's doing?
What's the balance then? What is the balance of sitting there and doing what I used to do in 2014 and literally demand having a reason for every single injury on the team versus the other end of it of going, it's an irrational system. Yeah, who knows? It just happened.
Well, it's about being less wrong, right? If you're not trying to be right, you're absolutely wrong. I can tell you that right now. But if you're trying to be less wrong, you at least might get closer to right. And so we need to do our best to try and understand, right? We're trying to understand very, very difficult things. Weight training and strength conditioning have been around for realistically, probably 45 years at a high level. And we still argue what exercise is better, right? And so we're like, okay, we don't even know what exercises are quote unquote best, let alone understanding, hypothalamus thyroid axis or hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axes and, gonad axes and so on and so forth. It's because we are dealing with something very detailed. And guess what? If we wouldn't figure it out first, the medical community will, because there's more money in that than it is us. We don't even know how to live with optimal health, let alone optimal performance. But what we can do is try and provide the best context for an athlete based on the information we do have. So just because you don't know how your body works doesn't mean you go eat Snicker bars all day and say, screw it, it don't matter to me. I'm going down the drain one way or the other. No, you do your best to do your due diligence to try and understand what's going to put you in a better state than eating Snicker bars would. So to say, a body's too complex, we can't understand it. Okay, well, you're no better than a deck of cards. Like I can just randomly draw exercises and we'll get somewhere. But if you say, I must demand everything, we're also making massive assumptions like we can actually understand it. So we need to kind of find that middle ground is probabilistically, where did it occur? What might have happened based on information that we have? And we can say, okay, odds are that injury of the guy riding a skateboard that broke his ankle probably isn't my fault. I can probably make that assumption. The non-contact injury, well, we can look through it and we can understand his data and maybe he was fatigued and we could say, look, this could have been a factor because we know scientifically that if you don't sleep enough, your reaction time goes down and your rate of force development goes down. So maybe a non-contact injury had to do with some perturbations in the neuromuscular system. And we can say it might have been a factor. And so next time we want to mitigate this factor by helping them sleep better. Now, I'm not saying it's going to prevent a non-contact injury, but it might prevent the probabilistic likelihood of a non-contact injury occurring.
Yeah, I think that's the hard thing right there is, and specifically in our sport, hamstrings is the big thing is like, I've had guys in my career that, couldn't RDL freaking 175, had very minimal hamstring strength, were the guys that would sandbag everything when you weren't looking and they could run for days and never had any issues. And then you got the guy that does every single thing you've ever asked him to do, can RDL, hamstrings are strong, no deficiencies, does everything the right way, and then goes out and pulls his hamstring. And you're just like, what is going on?
Well, that's all you can control too, right? And so you got to look at it from the standpoint of why does an injury occur? We don't know. We see the last straw on the camel's back. We don't see the other 99 built up. And so you might say, that guy pulled a hammy because he couldn't RDL enough or he had too much load before. Is it too much load or is it not ability to adapt to the load? Because you flip the coin on it, well, suboptimal nutrition, psychological stress, not sleeping enough, stubbing your toe all become probabilistic likelihoods of having a hamstring injury. And so, yes, we can somewhat control the strength aspect, but then we can also begin to look under these certain stones that might lead to other injuries or might be explanations to these. For example, we might RDL and get the strongest hammies in the world, but we find our athletes sleeping 4 hours a night. I mean, I don't care how many, Nordic hams you can do. If you're sleeping 4 hours a night, you're probably gonna have a perturbation in your neuromuscular system. You're probably not adapting like you could. You're probably gonna be a higher likelihood of injury. It's just the way it works. You think about your reaction time dips, you have suboptimal neuroendocrine responses, you have delayed certain autonomic responses, you could have reflex pathways that are perturbed. That could all lead to an injury. So yes, we can only do our best. And the way I like to think about it, when I was with Chase Phelps at Stanford, he had the great line of saying, we can't guarantee success, but we can guarantee you're not guaranteed to fail. And so we can only hopefully guarantee or not guaranteed to fail. We can't guarantee success.
That might be the best thing I've ever heard. I know this is probably a hard question to answer, Max, and it's obviously a generalization, but having a different lens, and you talked about our subconscious bias in the beginning of this, and I know we obviously have them. It hinders, whether we want to admit it or not, it hinders us from seeing certain things. What do you think that, and once again, just sticking, I guess, to us, collegiate football, strength and conditioning, what do you think we can do better as you kind of look and see, the general trends of our industry? What is something that you think that we can get better at?
Education. Period. Like, think about it. Like, how much did you hate physiology in class? I had a 2.0 in college. I was the animal at Mario Kart Double Dash. I will take any of you on any day. You give me Toad and that little turtle-looking dude, and I'll smoke anybody. But, I didn't give a crap about school at all because it was boring. It wasn't directed towards my profession. I met my soon-to-be wife there in physiology class. She sat behind me in physiology class, and she got 100% in all of her tests. I barely struggled past, and they made her take the last one because she was technically the curve, because the highest grade they based the curve off of. And so I took her notebook to study, and she would laugh at me during the test because I'm answering questions wrong. And she's like, you're not going to pass this thing. And because I wasn't interested. And so this is the only profession that we're given a scalpel to cut before we understand the body. We learn exercises before we learn sciences. We learn movements before we learn cellular aspects. At the end of the day, everything we do is influencing at the micro level. And what's unfortunate is it's not anybody's fault they went through that education system. That's what was handed to them. That's what was taught, and that's how it was discussed. But when you look at it and we try to uncover these stones, our stones typically go layer to layer, deeper and deeper inside of a human science's web. And so if I'm trying to understand something, we got to first off appreciate, like I said, what we don't know. We don't know a lot. And I think the most dangerous person is someone who knows what they don't know. Because if someone knows what they don't know, they know what to learn. And that's scary. That's someone who can get an edge on you. If we think we know stuff, that guy I'm not afraid of. They go ahead, go wild. You know everything. The guy doesn't know anything and knows doesn't know anything if someone's going to learn more than me. I don't like that. And so when it comes down to how do we better ourselves, it's how do we challenge ourselves to look at through different lenses, why something occurs. The simplest example was I was preparing to potentially work with a university on some stuff for a teaching process, and it's about how the body is complex. And what I wanted each student to do was look up a neuroendocrine study and connect it to every other major domain of performance. Connect endocrinology to biomechanics, psychology, physiology, physiology. There's one other one too. I can't even think of it right now, but essentially connect them all and challenge yourself so you can learn. And what I mean by that, if I can understand how my endocrine system affects my Newtonian physics outputs, I can start to draw connections. And guess what? This stuff is confusing. It does require a little bit of nerdiness. And it's not fun, but if I can understand that if I do power training, I have a higher likelihood, if I do it quite a bit, a desensitization of beta-2 androgenic receptors, and I take a protein and carb shake, which reduces the likelihood of that beta-2 androgenic receptor desensitization, which reduces likelihood of overtraining, then I don't have perturbed neuromuscular pathways, which mean my gait mechanics might be more accurate when I sprint, which means I don't have a misstride, which doesn't lead to a hamstring injury. So now I've taken power training to neuroendocrine to nutrition to biomechanics and explained an injury. So it's tough. It's not fun. And you realize when you do it, you're like, shit, I don't know anything. Like, who knows what's causing this problem as I smack my microphone all wound up over here, right? But it's detailed, it's tricky, but we got to challenge ourselves to try and appreciate that. No one made this stuff exciting for us. Like, this stuff sucked in school. I got straight C's in school. I'm surprised someone let me into grad school. I have no idea what I was doing then either. The point is, like, we need to find a way to make this passionate for people or upcoming students and individuals that's beyond exercise. It's beyond just, what's my block periodization, but let's try and do our best to be less wrong because it's exciting, it's fun, and, it's something that we can monetize in the future. Because if you can learn that stuff, you get an edge. You get an edge, you're a better coach. You're a better coach, you get paid more, you get to feed your family. It's how it works. It's a capitalistic market, unfortunately.
Great. Can you write all that down and explain to me what the hell that means later, please?
Yeah, we'll just go back and listen to it a couple times in the recording.
I'm going to, Heist, when you're cutting this up later, just send me that segment so I can listen to that about 10,000 times and maybe I'll figure it out.
You got my cell phone. You can give me a text.
No, I got an idea for a new app that Max just gave me on this sheet of paper. I love listening to him because his mind's so dynamic. It always makes mind flow.
I got to eat more potatoes. I'll tell you that much.
I have a great fiance that allows me to be a mental and a physical mess in the house. So hopefully there's I guess, some reason to the madness.
Drake, what do you got right now, questions wise? So I don't sit here for 3 hours asking him.
Yeah, I think, Max, if you want to talk about how you would address kind of maybe health first in a team setting, as opposed to maybe coaches in the collegiate sector just getting in a freshman athlete and kind of plugging them right into their style of training right away instead of addressing their health and lifestyle first.
Yeah, think about it in terms of everything we do and the effectiveness of – I got to get better with this microphone. I've hit myself 3 times. I'm sorry. If people watching this, if you're listening, I apologize. I have this microphone right next to my face and stacked up on protein bars, and it's not really balanced well. I just keep hitting myself in the head with it. We got to understand that what we do in the body is all determined on the body's capacity to handle it. For example, is there such a thing as overtraining, or is it under recovery? What's the effectiveness of a squat? They have a study that shows 2 of the same groups, 2 same athletes as judo groups or something like that, whatever. They're combat sport athletes, and they did the exact same training protocol, but they broke them down into high inflammatory and low inflammatory groups. The low inflammatory group had better adaptation. So if you want to argue, oh, well, squats work great for me, do they work great for you, or do they work great for your good athletes? Right? We can't start to pick and choose what exercise is best if our internal state of the athlete is already perturbed. So what's our major stones we can turn over? I opened up a talk like this. Unfortunately, I think it might have made some people mad. I said, you can lift weights all you want, but it's not going to kill you. You can eat poorly, it can kill you. What's more important? All right. I've never, we can lift all we want and we can do all the strength training you want. No one's ever going to die of cancer from strength training. But there's carcinogenic foods that are out there. And so you could argue that poor nutrition has a higher probabilistic likelihood of causing cancer. So one of those is probably more severe and influences the body greater than the other. You can't lose or gain weight by lifting weight, but kind of, I guess, technically, but you lose or gain weight by adjustments of nutrition. So let's understand what could potentially be the major limiting factor in our athletes' performance. It's not just protein, and it's not just carbs, and not just fats. What are the micronutrients? How can I get, simple things, making sure they have balanced glucose when they go to bed so they're not waking up 3 times. Don't pound that Snicker bar and ice cream right before you fall asleep because it's going to spike you. Understanding basic symptoms maybe of excessively high cortisol. That's from stress. Is it stress or is it nutrition? They have studies that show when people remove gluten from diets, they have less knee pain and knee sensitivity. So if knee pain can be stemmed from nutrition, how can I blame excessive squatting that's causing knee pain? We got to understand, there's a lot of things going on here. And so from that standpoint, to make it, easy to apply, it's, okay, I work with my nutritional department, my nutrition. We really do a thorough intake on these athletes and help educate them, because if they can be self-servant and autonomous agents to make the right decisions, then we might get the most out of training without even changing our training protocol. So it's kind of okay, let's maybe from a health standpoint address that aspect.
Yeah, can you just hit on a couple ways that you would kind of assess an incoming athlete? It's say a freshman comes in, and how would you assess their current state of health, in a kind of a costly manner, maybe if someone doesn't have a huge budget to get blood tests?
I would totally work with my nutrition dietitian and do what they're most comfortable with. Let's not pretend like we're the ones interpreting this information. If you go sit down, which maybe we haven't always had this conversation with your dietitian, your head of nutrition, and say, hey, how would you screen these athletes for health and wellness? Maybe you guys can work on developing some internal aspects that give you guys an edge that's greater than other entities, because you, the strength staff, are working directly with that nutritionist as a combined effort to find out how you can simply bucket people: good, medium, poor, and what interventions we can do. Good, we leave alone. Medium, they have once a month meetings. And poor, which probably isn't maybe everybody, it's probably a smaller handful, has weekly meetings. So now we start to take it from a purely objective, subjective way. So you can have objective in terms of they record their foods or whatever, and whatever the RD or nutritionist deems most important. It's really up to your context. In our setting in the private facility, I can go get every blood work in the world. I can get all their hormones measured. I can get all their micronutrients measured. I can have them take a poop test and understand what's happening in the microbiome. I can get everything. I can go measure their brain for all I care. We can do everything here. You can't do that there. And so let's understand inferential metrics. How can I get a questionnaire maybe that uncovers certain stressors? that they might have psychologically? How can I get a questionnaire that uncovers certain dietary habits? How can I get a questionnaire, because typically most self-servant means of doing it, that you're not burdened with the responsibility of having to finish it yourself. Understand someone's sleep habits, so on and so forth, and maybe potentially what wearables could our team invest in that would allow us to have better understanding of these as well.
Kind of just feeding off that. Say you had a budget to buy maybe 1 or 2 wearables for athletes in a team setting. What 2 would you get?
Something that records sleep, if that's acceptable in HIPAA and NCAA now. I'm not sure what the rules are anymore. But if you guys can measure sleep, that'd be awesome. And then something as simple as you guys are having in regards to like a jump height or something that you guys are assessing from a performance side, because then you guys internally know how to utilize that metric very detailed fashion in conjunction with something that isn't directly performance, such as sleep.
Right.
What would you pick? You're going to ask me the questions. Geez, come on. It's freaking loaded questions over
No,
here.
no, I'm on the same page there. I'm really not even sure if we can track sleep. Do you know, Matt? In a collegiate setting?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, you can track sleep. Yeah, I think that would be probably the first one that I would do is tracking sleep. Even just something as knowing like their activity level throughout a day. Like, cause some of these college kids, you don't know what they're really doing on a daily basis. Just something like steps or heart rate throughout the course of a day, what they were doing would be cool to know. What about you, Matt? What if you had to buy 1 or 2 tracking things to track your athletes, what would you buy?
Is this as far as anything at all that's out there?
Yeah, one or two. Yeah.
I think for us, just for the amount of volume and work we have, I think you got to have some form of GPS, data tracker, whatever form that would be. If that would be Catapult, that's what we've been using for the last year. Definitely that. I think just from a standpoint of getting guys to actually do it the right way, I don't know how much success you'd have or validity you'd have if you did a sleep tracker with 115 football players. So I might not go down that route just from a standpoint of the validity of the information that you'd get, or like I said, that how coherent they would be with the information, anyways. But even force plates would probably be the next 2 things, just because we can get such a good look into the nervous system, or at least from a standpoint of mass amounts of athletes. You got to kind of think in a standpoint of 115. So those would be probably the 2 things that I would use.
Max, kind of just playing off of Matt's point, what's your take on GPS and like load monitoring from that standpoint?
I mean, I'll be first to admit I have not worked with a football team in GPS. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know the ins and outs of every bit and detail of it. I do know that it's heavily Newtonian based. So it's going to be all the things you do, obviously, but it's also massive assumption based, because we're making the assumption that what we pry from a game is going to be representative of internal loading. And the issue is internal, external loading are not synonymous, i.e. someone who's more elastic might have more free energy. Someone takes 10,000 steps in a game, which is obviously a lot of steps. If they're having a 5% greater efficiency rate than someone else, how can we look at internal metrics and maybe bone loading at the same extent? How can we actually infer that? And so I think it's wonderful. I do think it's dangerous at times, because I think it has a massive analytics backbone to it that requires a huge statistician grouping that isn't always reasonable at college level. Not saying you shouldn't do it, but I know NFL teams can have up to 4 stat guys crunching these numbers out in a very detailed fashion. But again, I would be foolish to sit here and tell you I know the ins and outs of it, and to sit, I'm smart enough to know when I'm stupid, and I'll take a pass on that question outside of talking in circles for 5 minutes.
No, you're not wrong. I think that's where the flaws are for sure, is in the specific data of understanding, like, your more forceful athletes are going to have way higher player load. That is 100% fact. And what we've learned And this is I was with you, Max, on that. But what we've learned is the most valuable thing to us has been normative data. And that's where, like, when I was first getting into GPS, I was calling like the strength coach at Ohio State. Hey, what's your receiver's load like? Well, the answer is it doesn't freaking matter. It's normative data to us at Buffalo to how do we practice, how do we play, and then I think the most valuable thing is when you see someone get out of that normative area. What's in their bandwidth, whether that be individually or as a team. And that's where it's very helpful, because you'd be surprised at how often a practice, an athlete, a game, doesn't even matter how much you can get out of that bandwidth. If a Monday practice is supposed to be a Monday practice and all of a sudden it's like a Tuesday practice, that's a big deal in college football. So you're 100% right, Max. Those are the things that people get wrong, in my opinion. I agree with you. Not everybody would agree with us, Max, but I agree with that. I think the most essential part of GPS, at least how we do it, has been the normative data that we've collected from it.
Man, I always find it odd too, and not to go on a rant, that somehow the stats and analytics always falls back on coaching staff for you guys. I also find it quite odd that we're so intent on finding loading but we don't ever apply the same technology to skill development in the same fashion. So while we hang our hat completely on one end, we totally ignore the other. And I always kind of find that quite, I don't know, say goofy maybe isn't the right word, but something like that. And to the point where if we got creative in a GPS setup and start to use it for skill dev, how could we do that? I.e., I know connects on inside for gyms. You can actually run a play and it shows you how fast someone's coming off of a play. Now imagine as a skills coach, I look at that and I start to look at, wow, my shooting guard typically misses shots when his velo is this fast off of a down screen. Okay, well, how do I work on him being able to have some anti-rotation aspect of it so he can handle it and also be more upright and shoot the jump shot in a more effective manner? I get to my strength staff. I say, look, anytime this guy's a high velo dude off of a screen, he can't hit a jumper beyond 15 feet. He's off balance. Okay, strength staff, we say this, and this is important. The skill staff goes, guess what, bud? You're going to be sprinting off these screens. Now, all of a sudden, I have a skill dev that is very, very, very intertwined with the game itself. So now my ability to come off a down screen quicker is allowing me to get open and allowing me theoretically to score more points and my shooting percentage is up. Now I've directly influenced the game itself as opposed to just saying, oh, we should load less or load more. Well, what's the creative steps that we can get? Well, we can understand too, this guy, he's a great shooter, but he's not fast. Okay, we need to work on down screens to create more space because he ain't getting any quicker. So now we start to intertwine the strength staff, the skill staff, and the actual coaching player design staff, like play design staff, with the head coach, all working together. So we say, look, this guy in the fourth quarter gets tired. His variability off of a down screen gets way higher. He can't handle it off 15 miles an hour off a down screen. He's going to miss it. So we can't run a pen down screen to tie the game up because dude's probably gassed. So now we're starting to make educational decisions. At the same side, we know he's going to need to make a jump shot coming off a down screen at 15 miles an hour. So dude, get better at it. We're going to work on it in the skill dev. At the same time, we can start to track analytics as someone's shooting percentage off of a down screen at a certain speed. So now we've taken the skill side and made that a little bit higher. We take it one step further and do what baseball does. Now you have motion tracking on it. You understand rotation access. So you have someone's jump shot, you understand how quick the ball rotates. So someone's who's moving really fast, they lose rotation on the ball. So you understand, look, if we get them stronger, they might be able to express their skill at a higher level over and over again. So then you can start to have interesting little kind of player dev, kind of pseudo strength conditioning performance metrics where you start to look at a win gate. So we got a 30-second win gate. We're going to go baseline to baseline and shoot jump shots. Let's look at that guy's shooting percentage when his heart rate is above 75% or above 85%. And if we can improve his ability to shoot jump shots at a higher heart rate with a higher fatigue, then we've directly improved skill itself. So we can start to get really creative in these kind of things that maybe open up doors that we're not doing very well at the moment.
Connor, you got anything to add on any of the GPS stuff?
No, I mean, I think, I'm sitting here just jotting down a ton of good notes and stuff like that. I mean, I think both of you guys, Max, getting to hear your perspective on that, having not really maybe been exposed to that, but I think that your thought process there, I think is definitely very intriguing. Coach Sleeve, like you got on, it was kind of when we were first getting rolling with it, right? Like trying to figure out like what's a high load, what's a low load, should we be worried about this and worried about that, and just understanding. I mean, I think the bandwidth thought process and the bandwidth idea and understanding that, like really, to a certain extent, we want to look at averages within position groups and report that information back to, you know, our coaches and stuff. But then I think we need to appreciate the individual too, right? And understand that, you know, it really does come back to N=1, and there's going to be certain dudes that, whether it be genetics, training history, whatever, there's going to be able to handle a little bit more, right? So I think, you know, to look at a number in isolation really doesn't do you that much good. And you could say that for, you know, you could say that for GPS. I mean, that's obviously the specific area that we're looking at here, but I think you could use it for a whole host of other metrics too, right? And, you know, just understanding that, I mean, everybody wants to collect data, right? But, you know, are you doing it just to check a box and say you did it and put it on your resume and say, oh yeah, I analyzed data, or are you actually using it to make decisions, right? And I think that's where, you know, having the normative data that we're talking about, I think comes in really handy with that.
So there's like a psychosocial aspect to that as well, which I find interesting. So I refer back to my dad because he's a data strategist and I've learned quite a bit from him. And what they do is very different than what we do. They don't have opportunities to waste time. And so they go heavily from a data org standpoint to understand why they're collecting something and what actionable insights are they going to be held responsible to. Let's just think about it in terms of marketing. Who have you guys, I mean, just out of purely curiosity, have you done any marketing before or anything like that? Because it's really an interesting world that my eyes got opened up to in the past couple of years. Yes, no, maybe. It's cool. It's pretty fun, but it's also very much an analytics-driven situation. And so what I mean by that, let's just pretend we're sitting on an email campaign and we want everyone to buy flip-flops that we're selling. Great. We have a wonderful flip-flop. We know that people tell us our product's great, so we understand it's not a product issue. We send out this email campaign. We see how many people have opened up the email. We see what kind of people opened up the email. We see how many people clicked on the image that went to our website. We see how many people filled out the information to purchase it. We see how many people purchased it. So we have a kind of a simple breakdown and a funnel essentially of who's interacting, who's purchasing, and what we're doing with it. Now what's interesting is they'll take that and those are actionable insights. So they have certain demographics and individuals that respond in a certain way to a certain email marketing campaign. Now they might send out a B test, an A test and a B test. Same deal, but essentially different kind of marketing strategy within that email. It's the same group of individuals. And now that B test might get a better response. And now what they've done A/B testing to understand analytically what they should then do to make the best decision moving forward. And so they slowly start to turn these around over a little twist and, you know, kind of spins they'll do on it. And that's what happens to your Facebook and Instagram feeds. That's what happens while you're looking at Vegas on your Google search. Next thing you know, you got 8,000 Vegas ads on your Facebook because they're taking their insights and making it actionable based on what you're clicking. Now, at times what we do from an analytics standpoint, we collect data from a psychosocial standpoint to justify what we're doing because other people are doing it as well. However, like you said, coach, you're calling other people to see what a player load is, right? And what happens, you find out quickly is like, oh shit, this doesn't have direct actionable insights. You know, I've been now tasked with understanding GPS and I've never done GPS in my life before this and now I got to learn. And so it's literally taking a step back and trying to understand the smallest, most granular aspect possible and building off of it. Because what happens, we make these assumptuous models that we're doing this, we're doing that, and not saying anyone's right or wrong, but it's really hard to get clarity as to what's actually working. And the reason of that is because we've already done something with 17 different variables and we're trying to point out from a confirmation bias standpoint, I must have been that variable that did it. But really, we have no idea. And neither do I. I'd be totally lying to you if I sat here and told you I did. But I know from a business side, a business company isn't going to send out 17 different emails and they're not going to not analyze them. They're going to send out one at a time because they only have X amount of dollars per email they can send and understand what insights they can get directly out of it. And so I think about that, and then I think about what we do from a performance standpoint and how we can understand that. That's a big difference between sports science and data analytics. Sports scientists are not data analytics guys. That's called data analytics. They're guys who go to school to learn how to do stats better than me. All right, I'm not a stats guy. I'm not a numbers guy. I know how to interpret things in regards to the human body. So if I get a lot of different stats on a lot of different variables, I can draw cross connections and correlations inferentially and both statistically from them to make maybe a better decision than the stats guy could. But I am no statistician. I think what happens, we get confused sometimes and we say, look, this is sports science. We have data, we have numbers. That's not sports science. That's data science. That's a big, big misconception because data scientists, guys who are really good at it, get paid 6 and 7 figures to work for really big companies who make a lot of money. And so why are we pretending that we're data scientists? We're not. So we shouldn't be tasked with having to be a data scientist when there are literally people that go to school for that. And so I think understanding that from our standpoint has helped me personally quite a bit, because I'm not really interested in learning data science. I didn't go to school for it. I'm not very good at it. And we shouldn't be held responsible to that extent, I should say, that coach, you're saying, like, how am I trying to figure out these normative values? Well, coach, you're a great coach. Why are you sitting there trying to learn stats? Why are you trying to learn bandwidths of, certain variances when the school, like whoever is, hopefully paying you guys would hopefully see that and give you guys little financials to maybe get someone to help you, because that stinks to have to go back to and try and learn all that stuff. But again, that's a perfect world, and I'm a little bit ranting a little bit, I guess. But I would love to see that, because it would give coaches like you guys more opportunity to coach and utilize and interpret the data than it is to try and understand the stats behind the data, because that's really tricky at times, because there's people who go to school for that, and I didn't, and my guess is probably neither did you guys either.
So then going back to the jump stuff, let's just go use that as an example. We sit there and measure jump height for readiness. Are we wasting our time by sitting there trying to decide which variable has not got them ready? Or is it just the important question of saying, are they ready? Are they not ready? Or should we dig deeper and try to find, is it sleep? Is it nutrition? Is it the program? Because those are similar concepts.
Layers, right? So are they ready? Are they not ready is the most actionable insight you could do out of it. Are they there, or are they not there? And then you as a coach can act upon that. But then we can take that one step further and utilize other resources. I don't need to know if they're sleeping enough. I don't need to know how to put together the perfect nutrition program. All I need to know, if something's not acting right, who the heck they should see. I'm their liaison. I should quarterback them in the same way your nutrition staff hopefully should quarterback them to you. If the guy in the nutrition staff is saying, hey, coach, this guy's not eating. Like, we need to make sure his load's proper, because the dude is not eating any food at all. That's the same way. They're not going to sit there and say, oh, they should do 4 less squats, right? No, I hope not. They should quarterback them directly right back to you. And hopefully in the situation that you're in, you'd be able to quarterback them to your staff. So you can act yes, no, should I load less? And then what's going on? I can make some interpretations theoretically, but then I might quarterback them off to a different individual who can actually make that direct determination based on their own professional expertise.
I agree completely. Drake, so I don't take up all of Max's entire day, is there anything you have before we close?
No, I think that point that Max made a minute ago was that we're like human scientists versus data scientists. Like, there's definitely a difference. And Max is one of the best human scientists that I've ever talked to.
That's a good lie. I appreciate it.
No, his ability to take different complex parts of a human and make them into tangible outcomes, digestible pieces of information is second to none, really. So just wanted to put that out there.
Oh, I appreciate it. End on a warm, fuzzy feeling. Jeez.
Potato King, do you want to end on like a potato recipe perhaps, or something to give the people?
Oh yeah, I guess you guys, James, Connor, Brian, you guys got questions? Feel free to ask. I'd be happy
Max,
to hear.
You got to let the people know that it's a specific brand of ketchup that makes.
Yeah, it's the organic Annie's is fire. Absolutely.
It's no basic ketchup.
Oh, no. Oh, the chains are off with that guy. No games are being played.
Boyne, Heiss, Connor, he opened the floodgates, so.
Sure, Heiss, you want to start off? I chimed in a little bit already.
Yeah, I mean, we touched on a lot of the things that I had questions about, I think, previously. I guess in a quick answer, I know you use the G-Flight a lot in your training and your analytics, and we're talking about data. Do you use that for any type of, modified RSI the way we talked about it, or what do you use that for in your training?
So if you're using like an RSI mod, you're going to need a force plate. You could use RSI with the G-Flight, but an RSI mod is going to be strictly force plate driven because it's a ground force metric. Ground force reaction is based on contraction time over, how long you actually jump, versus an RSI is the impact off of a box. And so both are relatively, useful, obviously, but it's all your context and what you have available. If you have force plates and you deem the RSI mod to be an elastic metric that you guys can utilize, you can then dive into fatigue relative to someone not jumping as high. Are they not contracting as fast? Are they having a deeper range of counter movement? Are they eccentrically loading as fast as they've been doing, which they're eccentric velo? All these little aspects can go into it. And that's also a tricky aspect in regards to jump heights. Jumping is not a standardized means at all. Jumping, you can jump differently every day and give you a different outcome. And so that's where force plate can be really useful. You can classify 5 different metrics from the force plate: jump height, hell, you can just ask Drake, I guess, but eccentric velo, all these, RSI mod and contraction time, you can start to look at, is someone not loading as fast? Is someone taking longer to contract? Is someone doing a deeper range of motion? And is that the reason why they're jumping higher? Is that the reason why they're jumping less high? And how do I make that determination as a coach? And so that's why people like things like an RSI off of a box, because it does add a little bit of a constrained variable. You only have 2 real variables there. You have contact time, you have jump height, as opposed to more of those specifically ground force reaction metrics of an RSI mod of a force plate. It becomes a little more complicated unless you understand each one of those metrics themselves and how to maybe potentially interpret them a little bit better. Fair?
Yeah, fair, very fair.
Awesome. Would you rather run fast or jump high? I get to ask you one back, right? Mine gets to be a little bit more off the wall. Run fast or jump high?
Run fast.
That's the wrong answer. That's the wrong answer.
He doesn't jump high, so
I don't jump high, and I do run fast. So that's why I think that's what I got.
I like that. Max, one thing I wanted to ask you about, and I think kind of builds a little bit off that last question there a little bit. One of the topics that we've been discussing a lot as a staff lately over the past year or so has been this idea of deficiency specific training, where maybe you bucket your athletes. This guy's force deficient. This guy is elastic deficient. Maybe you look at that like Coach Lee was talking about earlier, and how we do some of our jump testing. I guess the question I have is, how do you find that balancing point between, let's say you identify an athlete as being force deficient, but his the demands of his sport being force deficient is okay. I guess, is there a happy medium that you can have with figuring out what their deficiencies might be versus what the demands of their sport are?
Oh, absolutely. They're deficient to all contexts of the sport. Example, I had an individual who we worked with in this offseason who super powerful dude. And you'd think his position is highly dependent on strength for the most part, based on what they did. But the way they excelled was through power. And so while you might label that individual as force deficient, he's power successful. And I ain't touching his power, because that dude makes money because he's powerful. So the last thing I'm doing is screwing with that. And so we got to understand then is, how does someone express their motor skill? Is that person manifesting their success through force dominance? And if so, at what level of success? Is it, a good JV player, or is it an elite NFL player? Because that's different. Well, they might express their success as an elite JV player through force. Their long-term potential might come out better as more elastic, assuming this person, say, is a slot wide receiver. Yeah. Right? And so while they may have success at one level and their motor output is successful based on their own playing way, is their playing potential going to be capped because that can only go so far? Example, Max Schmarzo can shoot threes really well. I could not move quickly or jump high. So my limiting factor for ceiling would always be jump high in athleticism. I had more coaches than you could name say, Max, you suck as an athlete. And I said, I know, but I can shoot the shit out of it, huh? But that didn't get me anywhere. It got me a little D3, but that's as far as my ceiling could go. So looking back on it, is it great to have an amazing jump shot that no one could ever beat, and I have a $100 standing bet for anyone who wants to try and beat me, including anybody? If you see me, you're more than welcome to give it a go. But that's also the limiting factor in regards to my training, because I didn't train for elasticity or force or any of these more athletic variables, which would have raised my playing potential and ceiling to beyond that of Division III. So you need to reflect context, time, and the individual and how they perform the sport.
It's awesome.
Fair?
Absolutely.
Would you rather look strong or be strong?
Oh man, I'd rather be strong.
See, I don't play hoops anymore. Oh boy, I'd rather look good. Come on, let's not get it twisted.
Max, I'm gonna send you an invite to an illustrious crew. We call it the LGN Club. Look good naked.
There you go. I'm sorry, guys. I'm already the champ on that one.
Oh man, I was hoping you were asking me about jumping high or running fast, because I think after watching all this Last Dance and watching MJ just float through the air, I think I might have to go with jumping high at this point.
Oh, absolutely. You know what? You can go play, I'm not sure what you'd play where running would look cool other than if you're just like sprinting around. But I could be walking around. I could jump over someone. I could be playing hoops and just mash on somebody, which is awesomely belittling to that person. So I'd rather just jump high and just be mushing on people left and right. Then you sprint and get fast break layups. Good for you. That's boring.
Oh, cool, man.
Have fun, dude.
That's the key. You're laying up. You're not slamming home, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I don't go to go play pickup basketball to look bad and pass the ball. I go to shoot and look good.
Imagine dunking on someone eating a potato with a mustache, Max.
Honestly, do you know what was great? I actually met with a team on here, and I have a mustache. I totally forgot I had a Tiger King background, and I didn't realize it saved when I did Zoom. So I turned it on, and there's a big old like Bengal tiger in the background. So I think you guys would have appreciated that one. The stash was beautiful. I dyed it black when I played hoops in college. I thought it was hilarious. So I should probably put that picture up here.
Brian, you got any questions for Max?
When I rewatch this 3 more times, I'm gonna have a laundry list. But right now, I'm grasping.
Any question? You got to fire one off. You're on the spot right now.
All right, an air fryer or a deep fryer for the French fries?
Honestly, I've never used an air fryer, but I've been very interested in it. It's in our wedding little list thing, registry. I should probably know what that's called. Oops. It's in our wedding registry. Very exciting. Going to be looking forward to it. Kind of concerned I might blow something up with it, but it's okay. All right, Smith machine or preacher curl? One piece of equipment.
Ooh, Smith machine.
Honestly, wrong decision, dude. You
can do more with it than a preacher curl.
I don't go to the beach to look good in a Smith machine.
You guys are 0 for 3.
God,
You guys are 0 for 3 on the questions.
Yeah, these are goose eggs. Come on now. It's jump high, look strong, preacher curl. Because you can always do some of them curl cleans, power curls. You get a little extra back involved, triple extension your curl.
Hell yeah.
Organic ketchup, baby. That's going to be the title of the episode.
Absolutely. And I'm going to throw a cheap plug in because I do that. If people interested in learning more, theedgeu.com, www.theedgeu.com. So TheedGEU.com is my educational website. So I always throw shameless plugs. Everyone has to deal with that, and I don't tell anyone I'm doing it ahead of time. So I think it's hilarious. I should have just dropped it a couple times in the middle of it. When you asked me a question, I said, you can find it here.
That's what you should have done. What's next for you, Max? What's going on? Any more books coming down the line?
Yeah,
websites? What's new?
We got a protein line coming out here very shortly. Upper echelon nutrition. It's 4 ingredients where it's made clean. I can't release all the details of it specifically, but basically it's going to be protein, Himalayan rock salt, cocoa powder, and stevia. And so we're making this stuff as clean as it gets for you, doing all the proper testing and protocols. Myself, Paul Fabritz, and Tom, I can never pronounce your name right. I'm sorry, my man. Even though you're like the founder of it all, I can never answer it. Tom's got a long last name. I'm horrible. Drake knows me. I don't say Drake's name right still. Drake Bear or something. Berberette. Drake strength to speed. I'm pretty useless when it comes to names. I made a post today that said Yuri Verkhoshansky, and I spelled it Urok, and someone catted off on me. So it's okay. If you guys read my post, you understand there's typos left and right. That's a big thing too. Before I go off, I'm going to say that because that's something I need to say is people interested in expressing information. You guys want to teach others. You guys share stuff. There's 2 things you need to realize. One is that you don't need to share something that's most important to the 99 percentile of information. I know one of the biggest things when I got nervous and I started sharing information was I was concerned would the smartest people think I'm dumb? And don't give a shit about that. Think about whether or not you can help someone. Can your one piece of information help 1 out of 100 people? Because if it does that and it's free, it's useful. Secondly is don't try and be perfect. Drake, don't try and not have typos in your posts, because people don't care if there's typos. People don't care if you misspeak. The real fact of the matter is they care about the message. I've never read something, you've probably never read something that had a typo in it, and you said, this guy must be an idiot. This guy's not worth listening to. At the end of the day, it's about understanding what you're trying to accomplish. Now, if you're providing a cover letter for a resume and you got to look good, you're going to some gala, you got to have your black tie, go for it. But if you're sharing something on your own coin, remember, it's up to your own standards, and your own standards shouldn't be limited by what you think someone else those standards should be. So I really encourage that, because a lot of times people ask me, oh, I wanted to write for, some of the great websites out that people like to listen to and read, but I got nervous and I didn't know if my information was going to be useful. I mean, no one's ever read something and been like, that guy's an idiot. Especially if they, totally didn't bullshit you completely. You can tell when someone's fucking lying, whatever. Excuse my French, but you can also understand too, like when someone's sharing some information, if you share some information and I read for the 1000th time why tibia and femur length changes how you squat, I'm not going to think you are stupid. I'm going to think you're trying to help someone who hasn't read that yet. So really do take the time to understand that no one is really judging you like they think they are. If they are, they can go screw off if they are too. Go elsewhere.
You're supposed to drop your mic now. Just hit it again like you did before. There you go, my man. All right, well, Max, obviously, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate the entertainment. that was unbelievable. That's going to go down in the Curriculum Hall of Fame episodes. Thanks to my co-host there, Drake Berberette, my staff, who's always shining, doing a great job. And
is that really how you say it? Is it really Drake Berberette? How the hell do you say it?
It's Berberet. So it's got a French ending to it, Berberet.
You got to put a little apostrophe above the T.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I get the family would appreciate that, but we'll see.
Sorry for totally interrupting that.
No,
yeah, it's Berberet.
Berberet, okay.
Does Ben know that, Drake?
Yeah, he does. He does it. He does it to he does it to mess with people, just like Max does.
Call Ben and tell him mission accomplished, because I sent Ben your last name like 2 months ago in the little whatever the hell you call it. He's like, yep.
Yeah. Little accent mark.
Yeah. He's like nailed it. But anyways, if you're enjoying these guys, we got 5 more of these episodes coming for the Coaches versus COVID. And remember, you can donate at www.coachesversuscovid19.com. My co-host, Drake Berberet.
There you go.
Max, thank you so much.
Of course, I'm excited for being on for the next 5. I'm assuming they're all me.
Yeah, we're gonna split this into 5 separate episodes so people can actually have a chance at digesting it.
I was gonna come in wearing my Sonics jersey, but I had a sunburn on my shoulders. Otherwise, people would take me really serious.
We'll have you back for another one, Max, so you can try to top it then.
Absolutely, very excited. Thanks for having me on, guys. What you're doing is really cool. Honestly, crowd, next time, questions ready. I prepped you guys. I said questions. And no one even answered any of my questions right. You guys, for that standpoint, but it's okay. Remember, we want to jump high, we want to look big, and we want preacher curls. So I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me on. What you're doing is awesome. Thanks, guys, for listening too. Drake, thanks again for having me. And what you guys are doing, a lot of people are doing good things at these times. But what you guys are doing is honestly a little more exciting than others, because, certain – I don't want to say not people in general, but you guys are really reaching out to individuals to try and provide something highly educational. And I really appreciate that from my standpoint. And so it's very exciting to see. And it's wonderful that you guys are continuing this on.
Thanks, Max. Thanks, guys. We'll see you.